The Holy Gospel according to St. John, the 5th chapter.
Glory to you, Lord.
After this, there was a festival of the Jews, and Jesus went up to Jerusalem. Now in Jerusalem, by the sheep gate, there is a pool, called in Hebrew Bethzatha, which has 5 porticos. In these lay many invalids, blind, lame, and paralyzed. One man was there who had been ill for 38 years. When Jesus saw him lying there and knew that he had been there a long time, he said to him, "Do you want to be made well?" The sick man answered him, "Sir, I have no one to put me into the pool when the water is stirred up, and while I am making my way, someone else steps down ahead of me." Jesus said to him, "Stand up, take your mat, and walk." At once the man was made well, and he took up his mat and began to walk. Now that day was the Sabbath. The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Christ.
Please be seated. Don't worry, if you can't see me, I'll try to make sure you can hear me. In a way, it doesn't matter what had happened to him. It had always been this way, and chances were slim it would ever change. Any hope glowed dim as he waits by the water. From others, not a glance, not a word. As they rush past, no soul is shaken or stirred. Like dust, he's forgotten on the fringe of this huge herd, just waiting by the water. Till that day that one stopped and knelt by, not dismissing, no disdain or disgust in his eye. But what a weird question. What a strange guy who found him waiting by the water. This one asked what anyone should have been able to tell, a question that started to crack through some invisible shell. He asked him if he wanted to be made well and no longer wait by the water. A hard question, harder than he thought, realizing all 38 years that he had fought, never really knowing the healing that he sought waited for him by the water. Asking for the moon, he told him to stand and lifted him out of his hot, dry land, fading the life he'd known, telling him he can finally stand healed by the water. Oh, it's harder to do in the morning. That poem, as you may have guessed, was based off the gospel that we heard today. And I invite us to picture it. There by a pool with all the pillars and porches laid a mass of people longing for healing. Some afflictions you could see, others you couldn't. But among them was this man who for 38 years, longer than the time some people lived back then, had been dealing with this illness. And he lied there. He had been there long enough to know the story. And the story that we get comes in a little footnote in some Bible passages. But the story goes that an angel would come to the water and touch it and stir it up, and it would start to bubble. And the first one who got to that water could be cured of anything that ailed them. Well, 38 years. And he had never made it to the water first. But still, he had hope. He, like so many others, sat faithfully by the pool, waiting for that bubbles, waiting for some chance to be made well. Years he had come close. Makes you wonder if in the beginning, how quickly he tried to get there. How desperately he tried to get others to carry him to the pool first so that he could be made well. And how many years he was pushed back, crushed. Festival times only made it worse. People within a certain radius from Jerusalem were required, especially Jewish males, to be at the temple during a festival. This made the massive crowd all the more massive, and his chance of being made well all the more slim. And then that Sabbath happened. As the crowd grew larger around him, there was one among them that did something different. And at first, when the man on the mat saw this strange face, how he must have wondered what he was doing there. This guy didn't look sick. Nothing seemed to be afflicting him. What was he doing here? Surely he'd be like all the others and just pass him by. But he didn't. This Jesus stopped and noticed him and knew he had been there a long time. Then he asked this outrageous question. Do you want to be made well? Okay, let's stop right there. What a horrible question. What a horrible question to ask somebody who had obviously been ill for a long time, who was looking somehow beaten up and depressed, I'm sure. Do you want to be made well? But Jesus wasn't being sarcastic. He wanted a response from this guy. And then let's consider the response. Does he answer yes? Does he answer no? Instead, the man on the mat just tells Jesus like it is. I have no one. No one's going to carry me. And the second that I try to get close, people push me out of the way. This is the way that it is. This is the way that it has been. This is the way it will be. Doesn't matter if I want to be made well. So we don't get a yes, we don't get a no. Instead, we can hear frustration. But we can also hear something else. Maybe the man on the mat's response is tinged by fear. What would it look like to be made well? For 38 years he had been this way. This was his life now. Even though he was so afflicted, he went to this strange bubbling pool to get a glimpse of healing. What else had he known? What would life look like? Because healing in the Bible is not about the cure. Healing in the Bible is about God's presence becoming apparent. It's about God joining people in the midst of suffering. It's about restoration of that person to wholeness of self and to their community. Healing was about new life. And that could be scary. So no wonder we don't get a yes or no. But if the man was unclear in his answer, Jesus was certainly clear in his response. Pick up your mat. Walk. Jesus doesn't wait for the guy to get it right. Jesus doesn't give him a strategy to get to the water quicker than anybody else. Jesus simply says, get up. It wasn't an outrageous demand. It was a statement that the healing that this man had waited for so long had finally come to him. He didn't need to reach to the water. He didn't need to scramble. The healing that he wanted came to him. And that healing told him what he could now do. Move forward. Leave your past on the ground. Do we want to be made well? I wonder if we would have hesitated like the guy on the mat. What does being made well even look like? What does that mean? Because all of us carry illnesses and sicknesses, some that cannot be seen. And we, like the man on the mat, and so many gathered by that pool, may try to scramble to a place of healing, get to that one spot before anybody else, so that we can be cured. And we, like the man on the mat, can end up crushed and waiting longer than we ever wanted. But Jesus' response to him is Jesus' response to us. And we see it in the cross and the resurrection. Jesus doesn't wait for us to get to a certain spot. Jesus doesn't wait for us to even have an eloquent response to his questions and his presence. Jesus brings us the healing that we need and that we long for, where we are as we are. And that healing tells us to do something we never thought possible. And that's move forward. Leave our hurt and our past behind so that we may stand healed and whole in the presence of God. What hurts are you carrying? What hurts are keeping you on the ground? May you experience the one who comes to you and makes you stand. Amen.